All right, welcome in. I'm Brian Edwards, MajorWager.com, doing a video. I'm not sure how the lighting and whatnot is going to come out on this one. I am in Biloxi, working on some stories on the gaming industry, and going to go play some blackjack here in a little while. But we are here to talk the Florida Gators, the 2019 Florida Gators, year two of Dan Mullen's tenure, his first season. A success, 10-3 straight up, 9-4 against the spread, blowout wins over Tennessee and FSU, ending a 5-year losing streak to the semis, the Gators' most bitter rival, and in doing so, handed them a 7th L and ended their record 36 years in a row going to a bowl game. Pimp slaps for the Vols, 47-21 up at the Swamp North, also known as Neyland Stadium, and a shellacking at the Toilet Bowl, 41-14 Toilet Bowl, also known as Ron Zook Field, also known as Doak Campbell Stadium, Bobby Bowden Field, but it was Ron Zook who got carried off the night they dedicated the field to Bobby. All right, enough jabs at the rivals. Let's talk the Gators. 8 starters back on defense, 5 on offense. Todd Grantham spurned the Bengals, the Bungles, Vintage Bungles, with A.J. Green getting hurt on a terrible field, and Vintage Bungles trying to take the Gators DC and failing. You look at the roster, and you gotta like everywhere, with the O-line being the only concern, unless you're like me and kind of sort of don't really trust Felipe Franks. Now, did Mullen do a phenomenal job with him? Absolutely. Did he show a lot of improvement? Absolutely. Did he play his best football at the end of the year? No question about it. 8 touchdowns without an interception, 4 rushing scores in the last 4 games. Turnover-free football. Proved himself to be a willing and physical runner between the tackles. And look, there's Emory Jones and Kyle Trask behind him if he struggles. But look, everybody knows Felipe Franks from a skill set. If you just take the decision-making and what's going on between his ears out of the equation, which, and by the way, he was better at the mental game late last year. And, you know, now he's a 4th-year junior. He should be more mature. By the way, his final stats, 58.4% completion percentage, 24-6 TDI&T ratio, 501 rushing yards and 7 touchdowns. That's before the subtracting sack yardage. He had 501 rushing yards. The O-line is a concern. Only 1 starter back, center Nick Buchanan. But Brett Hedgie started a lot in 2017, so that's a little misleading. And Stone Forsythe was he actually has 3 career starts as well. But obviously Florida lost a lot. Martez Ivey and Jawan Taylor had combined to earn all SEC honors 5 times. And then Tyler Jordan and I'm shooting a blank on the other starter on the O-line that was lost. But anyway, Frederick Johnson, that's who it is. They had combined for 26 starts. They're gone. Phil Steele ranks Florida's O-line only 9th out of 14 SEC teams. So that is the area of concern. But wide receiver, as good as Florida's been in a decade, and very, very deep. I mean, if Tyree Cleveland and Kadarius Toney aren't starting in a wide receiver unit, man, that represents some talent there. And running backs, they're good. LaMichael Pirine, Malik Davis back after another season-ending injury. We've also got the rising sophomore Damian Pierce and a true freshman coming in, and Naquan Wright as well. All right, Florida's defense gave up 20.0 points per game last year. Not only 8 starters back, but Marco Wilson also returns. Marco Wilson, Quincy Wilson, former Gators, younger brother. He started all 11 games You play 12, one got rained out, and the Gators didn't go to a bowl game in 17. So he started all 11 games. He tore his ACL in week 2 against Kentucky. So in my mind, Florida's got 9 starters back on the defensive side of the ball. And they had Jonathan Greenard, a grad transfer from Louisville, 10 career games for the Cardinals, 70 tackles, and 9.5 sacks. Jabari Zuniga, third-team All-SEC defensive end last year, 6.5 sacks, 4.5 tackles for loss, 4 QB hurries, 45 tackles. Adam Schuler, Kyrie Campbell come back. 4-year starter David Reese comes back. 25 career starts to his credit. 228 career tackles, 13 TFLs, 1.5 sacks, 1 QB hurry, 1 interception, 1 fumble recovery. Those are all career numbers. Second-team All-SEC in 2017. C.J. Henderson, preseason All-American in every publication that you can find out there. Like every mock draft right now has him as a top 10 or 15 pick. He's a rising true junior. The rest of the secondary's loaded. Brad Stewart, pick 6 on Joe Burrow to beat LSU in the fourth quarter last year. Donovan Steiner, Grantham dialed up the blitz on 4th down to Nick Fitzgerald. Game-clinching sack in a 13-6 win at Mississippi State. You got Trey Dean. You got Jawan Taylor. You got Sean Davis. You got DBU, not in Baton Rouge, not in Red Stick, in Gainesville. Special teams will be a strength. Evan McPherson, true freshman last year, all 50 of his extra points made, 17 of 19 field goals with a long of 48, 45 touchbacks on 81 kickoffs. Phil Steele's Mag, preseason third-team All-SEC. Tommy Townsend, Johnny's brother, averaged 45.4 yards per punt last year. Kadarius Toney, kick returner. Not great numbers kick return yardage-wise last year, but he can take it to the house on any given touch. And Freddie Swain, 85-yard punt return for a touchdown last year. He was 3rd in the SEC in punt return yardage with 224, and 4th in average yards per return, 10.2 yards last year. Special teams will be a strength for the Gators. Gambling numbers. All right, some offshores have Florida 8.5 shaded to the over around -135. You had the Westgate a week or two ago releasing 9 shaded to the under, -150. If you like the over, you get +130. There are quite a few books out there with a win total of 9 for Florida, and you can get plus money with the over. The Westgate had Florida at 8-1 to win the SEC championship game in Atlanta, but other shop around. Look, always shop around with these preseason bets because, more often than not, the numbers are going to vary, the prices and or the numbers, what have you. So to win the SEC at 5 dimes is plus 1365. So, I mean, that's like 1.5 or 3-2 compared to what the Westgate had. 5 dimes has Florida 45-1 to win the college football playoff, but I saw 60-1 today at sportsbook.ag, where the Gators are 8-1 to make the playoffs. Games of the year. Again, these vary. I've seen Florida 10.5 against FSU. I've seen them 14 against FSU. And today I saw them at Sportsbook, Florida only a 3-point favorite to Auburn. Oh, Gus, deal with it. Yeah, we scheduled for homecoming. Who cares? Anyway, other games of the year. Florida -9 at Kentucky. These are from Sportsbook. 16.5 at home to Tennessee. 7 underdog at LSU. 7.5 point dog at Georgia. And a 10.5 point favorite to FSU. Again, that's Sportsbook. But 5 dimes today, rather than 3 to Auburn, has Florida at 5 against Auburn and 4.5 at Missouri and 13 against FSU. For the opener against Miami, most books have Florida a 7-point favorite. A few offshores have the total at 50.5, and the Westgate has the Gators at -6.5 against the Canes. So if you're in Vegas and you like the Gators, go to the Westgate to bet it rather than anywhere else. Handicappers take Brad Powers. I got his opinion. You can check that out in my article. schedule analysis. I just want to point out, look, just as in Orlando, all you people out west, up north, what have you, don't think of that as a neutral field game. Florida will have a minimum of 75% of that crowd there, guaranteed. So in terms of home crowd advantage, noise-wise, you make Florida, if you're not giving them full credit for a home game, you give them a little bit. Damn sure don't make it a neutral game. Not a whole lot, no teams have 2 weeks to prepare for Florida, except for Georgia and FSU, when both teams, or all three, if you will, have 2 weeks to prepare for that game. The only back-to-back road spots get on a plane twice in 2 weeks, at LSU October 12th, at South Carolina October 19th. So when I initially looked at Florida's schedule, I marked 8 wins and 4 swing games. I made the 4 swing games the 2 underdog spots at LSU and versus Georgia, where Florida will definitely be an underdog in those games, unless Joe Burrow or Jake Fromm gets hurt between now and then. But those are going to be the only games where Florida's an underdog, unless they just have a ton of injuries and Missouri exceeds expectations, and perhaps Missouri will be favored there late in the year. But upon more reflection, so the 4 swing games were obviously LSU, Georgia, and then I said out at South Carolina and at Missouri. The thought process with that South Carolina being letdown scenario if you win at LSU, and even if you lose at LSU, tough to get over it regardless. A tough physical game, as it always is with LSU, and then you got to get on the road again, and Williams-Brice will be jumping for sure. So, but upon further reflection, and the thinking being, I think Auburn's got the best defensive line in America, and they can get some pressure on Franks. I think Auburn is probably more of a swing game than South Carolina, Missouri. And you see that reflected in the lines, although there is no games of the year line for South Carolina. So I would really say now, look, Missouri and South Carolina could beat Florida, especially if Franks isn't playing well. But, if all things equal with, in terms of no team favored over the other or having an advantage over the other in terms of injuries, where each team is that week from an injury standpoint, Florida probably should be. But look, anytime there's going to be a spread less than 7 and you're on the road, of course you can lose that game. But anyhow, I really think Florida's probably going to go 10-2. And I'm not saying they're going to definitely lose at LSU and Georgia. Those are the most likely scenarios. They could win at LSU and lose at South Carolina. They could win against Georgia and lose at Missouri and at home to Auburn. So, I think 10-2 is really the safe call. So, I always say a 1.5 game cushion. If your win total is 8.5 and you can get Florida on the over, I would play the over, but not for a lot, because you got to do minus 135. So, if 200 is your average bet, only bet 100 or maybe 150 because it's minus 135. That's my thinking there. So I think Florida goes 10-2. Then I think they win a bowl game. I think they go 11-2, and maybe go to the Sugar Bowl. And Dan Mullen's got it rolling. Dan Mullen has got it rolling. I didn't have a whole lot of good nuggets. Obviously, it's only Mullen's second year. I also point out 5 Dimes has Felipe Franks 125-1 odds to win the Heisman Trophy. The Gators went 4-0, both straight up and against the spread in 4 road assignments last year. They were plus 1,084 in net yardage last year and plus in turnover margin. I'm Brian Edwards, coming to you from the Palace Casino in Biloxi, Mississippi for MajorWager.com. Over and out.